Hello and welcome back. Happy Spheres of Influence release, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a rundown of Dev Diary 122, which is the Sphere of Influence changelog, and we're going to be doing it, obviously, a little bit after the Thursday because I have been embargoed, and I can't release stuff until now. Like, probably right now. I think I'm probably going to pub this the instant I can release the embargoes, and so we're going to be doing a rundown of the patch notes, which were released last Thursday. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Happy Thursday! So glad to see it. We've been getting happy Thursdays for a while now. I think they finally realized that Thursday is a very happy day, but not as happy as this day because Spheres of Influence has just been released. Today I'm very pleased. Me too. I would just like to comment that I'm very pleased. To announce that the changelog for Update 1.7 has been appropriately named Kawa, after the delicious saffron, cinnamon, and cardamom infused tea from Central Asia. Big nice. In addition to the changelog, you will get a rundown of the major features of the Sphere of Influence expansion, which I will briefly talk about as we kind of go through them, give some of my impressions. I have about 50 hours played on the 1.7 on some of the earlier branches of it, although, to be fair, they've been adjusting balance, partially due to feedback from people who have had early access, and so some of my reference experiences might not be up to date, and some are changing dynamically as they kind of tune things up, let's say. Most of the features were developed for, but for the full details, you should read the previous dev diaries on the subject. Okay, before we get into the changelog, I want you to draw your attention to known issues for Update 1.7. Most of these bugs will be addressed in upcoming hotfixes shortly after the update. As usual, save games made on any 1.7.x version will be compatible with subsequent hotfixes, but save games before 1.6 or will not be compatible with 1.7. Yeah, considering that they're changing building ownership entirely, this actually is probably, in terms of any patch, the 1.5 patch before this was the most revolutionary patch, let's say, metagame changing the way you play. This seems to change the game even more than that, and it really does it with a lot of loud cars. And so here we see they are just kind of including, but not limited to, building ownership revision, changing things up quite a bit, but alongside it, the economics revision and the ownership dividends revision just completely changes the metagame. Now I think what's meta is probably interventionism into laissez-faire into either interventionism or council republic / command economy might be reasonably playable. I haven't tested enough with command economy, but I still don't like deleting money from my economy, but it deletes a lot less because of the modifiers, the way the modifiers work now. So gaining recognition is done through diplomatic means. It takes a little while. We did do a China run. It took us kind of forever. If you're smaller and leaner, it should be a little bit easier. Literacy is one of the factors, and it's hard to get a lot of literacy as Qing. Building registry, we haven't been using that maybe as much as we want, but it is a tool. More diplomatic actions. Diplomacy is a lot different. The AI is a lot more competent, a lot more aggressive, and diplomacy, it's not just the actions. The way that the AI seems to evaluate stuff actually just seems a lot more human, and I've really been enjoying the way the AI has been performing, even though obviously sometimes they're really just thumbing your pie. Trade League and historical power blocks, hugely been updated. Power blocks are just like a very interesting thing. They don't seem necessarily too well balanced, although I'm not sure exactly what the meta is. Foreign investment in subjects, this is in 1.7. You will be able to get investing relations with the DLC, but the foreign investment in subjects specifically is in part of the free patch. Performance improvements, huge. I think a lot of my misplays in some of the runs you guys will be seeing upcoming that I will be releasing are due to the fact that going on speed 5 and playing on speed loud car outside, it's so fast that we have less time to think about the game, and we're actually messing up a lot more. And also, I guess we're playing with a whole bunch of other stuff, and we haven't been consuming a lot of calories, but I think that the performance is just so much improved. Interest-group involvement in foreign policy. This one is a bit interesting. Subject management and interactions. There's new interactions you will get to see. Not going to go into it too much detail here. And migration changes. There's some slight migration changes to serfdom, and tenant farmers not allowing peasants to migrate. I think that a change that is going to hugely affect the metagame here, that's not kind of present, is they massively nerfed grain production across the board, both in subsistence farms and in regular farms. And now there's roughly somewhere between 50 and 60% of the grain that there was before, which is enormous. It negatively affects SOL, and it negatively affects radicalism pretty significantly, because grain is the #1 good for your lower rung pops. And then also, on top of that, high taxes got significantly nerfed, such that now you really feel like you're kind of riding the lightning in terms of radicalism, and your abdication cooldown is like really, really significant in terms of thinking through the metagame. So now let's take a look at their expansion teaser. So we get power blocks, more than just the trade power block. I think the trade power block is probably, I'm not really 100% sure it's the best. It seems kind of the best right now, but the other ones are not available unless you have the DLC. And I think there's probably situations where you do the other one. I think that it's easy to get mandate on the trade one is one of the reasons why the trade one is really strong. But sample size on a lot of this stuff is really small, so it's hard to evaluate, and I don't necessarily have the answers. And you shouldn't, if you're watching this a month after release, you shouldn't consider any of this like definitive in terms of the strategy. I'm just trying to get something out, you know, that's timely rather than timeless. Okay. Foreign investment, investing in other countries, regardless of if they're your subject or not. It requires getting a relationship, an investment relationship, which is a little bit hard, but then once you get this, it's really easy to pull people in your block if you just dump like an enormous amount of eco into their economy. There's the Great Game. We haven't played that too much because we were polling to see who was interested or what run we should be doing for the stream, so I don't have any experience with the Great Game content. Interest groups in lobbies, this is, I think it adds like a layer of the diplomatic catalyst mechanics, which like they're not talking about here, but the underlying logic of the game seems to be significantly better as a result of there will be certain things that trigger the AI to start behaving aggressively towards you, and it definitely does seem a lot more human. And these will also trigger the interest group lobbies, and the lobbies themselves will also make the AI tend to behave in a way towards you that's a little bit more historic, based on what you've done before, and a little bit less schizophrenic, which in terms of immersion is, I think, a lot better, and is a big deal. Also, the AI is a lot more aggressive about accruing infamy, so it's harder to have good relations with the AI, generally speaking. New subject interactions, there you'll be able to see there's a ton of them. Enforced nationalization, seize the means of production. The ownership is just very, very interesting because so government ownership sucks hard, and that's the reason why I think interventionism's good early, is because it makes your government ownership suck less, and early on you have a ton of government ownership, and then once you have mostly capitalist ownership, the laissez-faire gets better, but then eventually you will have a lot of government ownership again, and then Council Republic or interventionism becomes good. The block monuments, I still have to see what all the monument bonuses are, or what causes the bonuses. There's been a little bit of inconsistency because I've seen multiple patches, and I think they've reworked these like halfway through me seeing some of them, so I don't necessarily have the answers. And then more historical flavor. We get a lot of flavor of the Great Game, but I haven't seen that too much. Okay. Update Kawa, as well as the Spheres of Influence, will be released on Monday, June 24th. That's now at around 18 CEST. Those of you who either own the ground edition of Victoria 3 or our first expansion pass will just have to update the game to get your hands on Sphere of Influence and start extending your tentacles past the globe. Big nice. If you do not own it, it can be pre-ordered either standalone or as part of the expansion pass. Let's get into it. I thought we already got into it. Man, this is probably going to be a long one. We'll keep going, though. As a power block, as a great power or major power, notably you have to be recognized in order to form a power block. You can form your own power block centered around one of the central identity pillars. Trade League seems to be the strongest. This is available 1.7 for free. Sovereign Empire, this one also seems strong. It requires more testing regarding how much mandate you can accumulate, as well as how good the subject interaction or make subject interaction is. Military treaty seems kind of bad. Ideological, the back three seem kind of bad. Ideological union specifically is really hard to We had a game where we had it for a little bit. It seems really hard to generate mandate unless you are really slow and methodical with the way you are interacting with having subjects, which is you don't want to have too many subjects because they will be part of your power block. But maybe if you really play into it properly, it can be interesting. The religious one just seems kind of more RP than anything, but it's something you could do. Each of these provide different opportunities and benefits to its leader with respect to member countries, and can be developed further with up to 20 different principal groups. I think you only have options for 19 because or maybe it's okay. You have I forget, some of these principal groups are locked behind some of the central identity pillars. So like Trade League is the only one that can get internal trade, and I think each one of these has one unique to them, but okay. As a power block, you can expand your global reach by leveraging, by extending your leverage over other countries. The easiest way seems to be building a lot in their country, although my sample where I was able to generate a lot of leverage, it seems to be that it's a little bit harder to generate leverage towards that now. I'm not 100% sure. Where you have a declared interest. A large number of factors can cause you to gain or lose leverage, such as maintaining diplomatic pacts. Diplomatic pacts give you a large bonus, maintaining favorable lobbies, helping them in wars, being accepting or discriminatory against their cultures, or making them economically dependent on you through foreign expansion or trade. I thought it was the other way around, whether they discriminated against your culture, but okay. Power blocks can be expanded peacefully through diplomatic invitation to your block, or if the invite fizzles, through a diplomatic demand the country may or may not yield to without an armed conflict. We haven't used the armed conflict one CB yet to pull people into our block, but it's maybe... I have to see how much infamy that costs. There's huge change in terms of expansion strategy because reducing autonomy doesn't cost infamy anymore, and instead it is a product of subject interactions, which means that you accrue a lot less infamy throughout a run, but instead you have to develop your subjects in other ways before you can annex them, which I don't have necessarily a very strong handle on what's optimal there, but it dramatically changes how you should do things. The leader of a power block must maintain its cohesion by enforcing shared values across the block. And so the cohesion being one of the really big modifiers for generating mandate. And so it's really easy to get the cohesion in the trade block because it requires you just being kind of the biggest economic power within your own block. And it's hard to generate cohesion for, say, the ideological union because you have to, everyone has to share laws with you, basically. Failure to properly manage cohesion across your block may cause internal strife, and also makes it harder to expand your block. All members of your power block may construct expensive statues to represent glory, providing a number of benefits to the states built in. The leader of the power block can customize both the appearance of the statue, the power block emblem, and its name to better represent visions for a global future. Available with 1.7, the Trade League identity pillar and its two primary principal groups, internal and external trade, are available even without the sphere of influence, and replaces the customs union diplomatic pact by enforcing a shared market across the power block. If you want to use the other ones, you have to get the DLC. Available 1.7 is also possible to play as Great Britain, Russian, or the Ottoman Empire, who starts with a sovereign empire identity, permitting them to subjugate weaker power block members, or as Austria, whose power block is identity ideological union, permits them to enforce regime change in countries that start flirting with the concept of republicanism and suffrage. We suffered so much. We did a Krakow run. We're going to be posting it soon. We suffered so much from Austria just keeping on enforcing bad laws on us. It was really, really brutal and rough. But if you wanted to, you know, make the People's Revolution, right? If you wanted to make the rest of the world communist, this is what you would use, and it probably gives you, I think that blocks in general are going to give you a lot more RP in terms of playthrough, because you could do something that you know is suboptimal, like, hey, I want to enforce all of my laws on everyone, or I want to enforce all my religion on everyone. This is suboptimal, and then you could try and optimize that particular way of playing. It's suboptimal for maxing GDP. Players without the sphere of influence may also play a member of the Zollverein, an established trade league at start, but anyone can establish a trade league. Okay. They do have dev diaries for the blocks. We won't go into them. Foreign investment. With the investment rights or mutual investment pact, countries gain the ability to build up in another country's resources or manufacturing industries. You need the DLC for this, or offer rights to another country if they're incapable of rapid industrialization on their own. Without the DLC, you can only do it in your subjects. This extends to both countries and its investor class, who may use its investment pool to construct private industry abroad and gain access to new resources, cheaper labor, or both. I believe if you build in your foreign country, they can also get purchased up by your ownership class, or at least we noticed that when playing the China run, which we'll be posting soon. With the foreign investment power block principles, these rights can be extended across the entire power block by default without needing to establish and maintain potentially fragile pacts. I think that I think foreign investment power block principle is probably not that good, but okay. With the power block leverage being informed in part by economic dependence, this can be a great way to maintain control over your power block members during the extent of the long Victorian century. And one thing that I haven't played around with too much conceptually is that there's probably better principles for different phases of the game, and then like the construction one's really, really good early on, and then as construction falls off as you run out of pops, it's going to fall off. Available with 1.7, ownership is represented by 2 buildings, manor houses housing the aristocracy, financial sectors housing capitalists who can own buildings outside of their state or even in the same country. These buildings extract profits produced by the building levels they own, leading to much greater variance between productive states and wealthy states. Available with 1.7, in addition to private ownership through manor houses and financial sectors, cooperative ownership is also possible through the right economic laws. Cooperative ownership gives pops the working the building the fruits of their own labor, and passing it just gives it to them. So there's a number of ways you can kind of change hands of terms of ownership, but if you just pass the Council Republic, it just instantly gives them all to them. So if you pass Council Republic and then go back to interventionism, suddenly you are going to own all the buildings yourself as the government, which government-owned buildings suck really hard, except maybe with command economy, maybe they don't suck, but they still or it's just a matter of how much bad it is, because command economy gives you a lot of control in exchange for efficiency, which is probably how it should be, but command economy is much better now than it was in 1.6. 1.6, it would delete 75% of the money. Now, command economy deletes 25% of the money if you have all of the good modifiers, or 20% of the money. I think there's one country that gets a 5% modifier. I forget where they get it through. Someone was mentioning it. I forget the name of the country. The getting up to 80% of the dividends into your treasury directly is going to be exceptional when you have a lot of peasants, because depeasanting is really valuable. And so it's probably command economy, if you can generate enough pops, is probably actually good. But okay. State-owned enterprises are also possible, which yield dividends directly to state coffers or drain them. This is what we're talking about. Under most economic conditions, buildings constructed by the state are put up for sale when completed, making them available for acquisition by private interests. If you're on laissez-faire, they must be put up. If you're on interventionism, they can be put up, or foreign countries if foreign investments are in play. Under others, it is possible for the state to nationalize industries with or without compensation to the owner, with sometimes grave repercussions, domestic or international. Available with 1.7, overlords are always able to construct industries in their subjects, even without pacts or blocks enabling it. Always able to, yeah. Okay, with the sphere of influence expansion, it is also possible to nationalize your country's foreign-owned industries with the diplomatic demand, but be prepared to defend your economic self-determination. Yeah, so you could make a pact, let someone invest a whole ton of money in you, and then kick them out. I haven't experimented too much with this. I imagine it's pretty good if you are planning on enforcing it. We have to see how much infamy it costs too, in terms of balance, but it is a play pattern that we have to take a look at. To read more about foreign investment, see the dev diary here. Okay. Lobbies, catalysts, and opportunities. A lobby consists of when one or more interest groups in a country have a stance on another country in the world. This stance can be either positive, where they wish to form closer relations or imitate its laws and reforms, or negative, where emphasis lies on distancing yourself, forming rivalries, or even crushing them in an armed conflict. It seems to be the case that this kind of informs how the AI plays quite a bit. And that you will have a catalyst, it will cause lobbies to be formed, and then this will give you continued kind of trajectory of relationships with the AI. Lobbies have a chance to form in response to a diplomatic catalyst, which can trigger for a variety of reasons, such as establishing or breaking pact, choosing a particular event option, having a revolution, joined or being kicked out of a bloc, inviting or exiling an agitator, and so on. Whenever something happens as a result of catalysts, such as lobby forming or AI strategy changing, you will be told exactly the reason it happened. Lobbies will benefit or hinder you in a number of ways, such as increasing the country's AI acceptance for diplomatic pacts due to your close ties. This is kind of one of the bigger ones, especially if they give you an opportunity, it gives you a bonus for this stuff, or increasing your war support when fighting a hated foe. The impact your lobby has relates directly to its interest group membership's clout. So if you have a vested interest in supporting these groups that align with your foreign policy and opposing those which support your geopolitical enemies. I think we maybe play less on trying to support the AIGs that are in particular groups, and more on the reverse, which is that if a particular group has an IG that you like, you tend to do more, or you tend to care more about making sure that that group is happy. So if you have an anti-Prussia league where it's a bunch of people you don't like, it's not the case that you just basically like play nice with Prussia, I guess. I think it feels more the other way around. If you have a bunch of interest group members who really hate a foreign country, then I think you're incentivized to go after that country a little bit more for IG approval, because IG approval is a great modifier to have because it often activates bonuses. Adhering to your lobby's wishes will incur appeasement, which is another source of interest group approval, and leads to political stability at home. Opposing them will of course do the opposite, so think carefully if you could afford to break the pact that they like. With a sphere of influence expansion, lobbies will occasionally grant opportunities or make demands. These are journal entries that incentivize you to go after foreign policies or which you could ignore at your peril. It seems like ignoring doesn't really have that big a penalty, but okay. Also, with the sphere of influence expansion, you have access to diplomatic action that lets you fund lobbies in other countries. Really have a small sample size with this, not sure how good we think it is, but it allows you to spend money to kind of gain advantage over time by bribing, providing much-deserved financial support to the country's elites, increasing the chance that lobbies favoring you or lobbies opposed your enemies will emerge there. If a suitable lobby already exists, the financial support you provide will increase its power and improve the leverage you get there. So I think that, in particular, this diplomatic action is good for generating leverage, more so than generating a certain diplomatic opinion, although maybe diplomatic opinion is kind of a fine way of looking at it in some spots if you're super rich, so that you can pull them into your power block. Subjugated countries can also be home to two other types of lobbies, those for against their country's overlord, supporting integration or independence respectively. We didn't really see much of these in the Krakow run, as far as I remember. Actually, no, we saw the one supporting so Austria. The thing is the lobbies will form often on the basis against or for a country on the basis of how similar they are with you in terms of laws, I think is one of the major factors. And the fact that Austria kept on enforcing their laws on us did make it so that with their ideological union, make it so it was a little bit rough. That subject interaction, that was like not fun to be in a block with someone with the ideological union. And interestingly, it might be something you can do where you can invite someone to your ideological union, you force them to change a bunch of their laws, this causes their country to rev, and then you just side with the revolution. This might be a play pattern that's highly abusable, which would be an interesting and fun one. We'll see how that goes, but like if you change like 6 laws, especially going on to Council Republic. Like, everyone hates that, right? So that almost certainly will trigger a revolution. And so if you just do that, you can force revolutions, side with the Rev, force subjugate them, this type of thing. But then the Rev will not have the laws that you want in the ideological union, right? Or maybe you could yo-yo sway back to the main guy's side. Nurturing or suppressing these lobbies can provide a necessary political impact. You need to nudge liberty desire in the direction you want and inform new AI strategies for subject countries. Okay. And you can read more about them here. Subject interactions, which they add a lot. Sphere comes with a number of brand new ways you can interact with these subjects, or if you are a subject, ways you can engage with your overlord. Notably, requesting autonomy increase. Actually, the biggest one seems to be asking another person to support your independence. It really allows you to set up and plan escape better, and then you can reduce autonomy a little bit better, it feels like, and that's kind of what we did with the Krakow run. Several new categories of diplomatic actions have been added, which not only apply to countries' special relations, overlord, subject, etc., etc., special relations. Okay, overlord, subject, subject, overlord, power block leader, member, and power block member. I'm glad if the internal logic of the game delineates these a little bit better, that'll be super nice, because in previous versions of the game, and I'm not sure if it does yet, customs union was like kind of the exact equivalent of like being a subject for the purposes of a lot of like diplomatic and AI stuff, which was very strange. But okay, an overlord can use their use their actions on subject to increase or reduce weekly payments. They must submit, distribute conquered territory between their subjects, share technological knowledge with them, permit them to control their own market, and much more. I haven't experimented too much with the distributing of conquered territory. Really wish you could give them the infamy for the territory, but in particular, reducing payments and this type of stuff helps you to reduce liberty desire, which is more rather than infamy throttling your ability to reduce autonomy, liberty desire does. And so this sort of micromanagement of your subjects with a sensitivity towards knowing which ones you want to annex versus which ones you want to keep, this can help you decide how to do or these give you tools to kind of enforce your strategy. Similarly, subjects can petition their overlord to grant them relief in various ways. This often costs them liberty desire, a new metric in 1.7 that tracks how much a country's elite is in favor of independence. Like, notably, if your subjects have really high liberty desire, they will get a lot more radicals. If they have low liberty desire, they will get less. And so very often the disloyal ones will rev a ton. And this gives opportunities that are really neat, because very often if a country doesn't like you, they will side with your subjects' revolutions pretty aggressively. And so you can see situations with the loud car outside where you have a subject that revs, and then a bunch of GPs join against you, and then you effectively have to give up the subject. And so I was really pleased that this was a bit more of a thing, because the AI is being opportunistic about it, and this opportunity is created by them having so much liberty desire. Also, they can seek out having someone support their independence. I had one subject ask for 3 different GPs to support their independence, and then when they decked me, I was like, well, I can't, I'm not strong enough. I just gave them up, and it was a bit of an interesting one. Like leverage, this metric is informed by a variety of factors such as opinion. Opinion seems to be the strongest one, but also many pacts maintained between countries, such as economic dependence on the overlord, relative prestige, and so on. If subjects' liberty desire gets very high, they will start generating more radicals, prompting them to request increased autonomy from their overlord. If not granted, could well result in a diplomatic demand for full independence instead. On the other hand, a subject with very low liberty desire can be persuaded to have their autonomy reduced, potentially leading them down the road to full annexation if they aren't careful. Okay, with the sphere of influence expansion, in addition to many new diplomatic actions, it is also possible to support subjects' independence, causing liberty desire to increase, and automatically including you as a supporter in diplomatic play for independence they launch. Subjects may even support each other and will rebel in a group if a war for independence is imminent. On the flip side, you can also guarantee independence for a country that is not yet subjugated, ensuring your rival can make such a demand a question. for a country that is not yet subjugated. Sorry. Ensuring the arrival can make it such a demand unquestioned. Okay. More about subject interactions, of course, can read here. And then also, throughout the 19th century, Russia and Britain, and this is the flavor stuff, competed with each other for influence in Asia. Boy, do they get mad at you if you do stuff in Asia, in Central Asia, or... We subjugated Persia, and we had, like, UK declare on us for transfer country in one run, which is not something that I've seen the AI do before. This period of rival was colloquially known as the Great Game, beginning with the Caucasus and Central Asia, and expanding over time to include struggles in faraway areas such as Korea and China. In the Sphere of Influence DLC, you can play this crucial Cold War between two dominant powers, two dominant but very different great powers for several perspectives. Russia, Britain, Persia, or one of three other countries, Kabul, Herat, and Kandahar, that will form the country of Afghanistan during the era. The Great Game can be experienced by playing one of the 6 countries in question in any regular game, or through the Great Game objective, which provides a quick start on all the features and sphere of influence. You will naturally also experience the conflict from the sidelines while playing at any country in the world. So going after Persia is a little bit worse because it will antagonize both the UK and Russia. It was like kind of pretty meta before, and now it's a little bit more questionable, but also you'll have more opportunities probably to reverse sway Persia than you would before, and can get involved to help or hinder any of its participants. Many regions adjacent to the Great Game also have their own unique narrative content related to it, such as the Caucasus War, Donbass Rebellion in Joseon, Korea, and the expansion to Tibet. The Great Game is designed to make full use of new features in Sphere of Influence, and you can be sure that your skills in maintaining your power block, expanding your leverage, supporting your foreign lobbies, expanding your economic reach through foreign investments, and interacting with subjects will be tested in the process. To increase the historical accuracy of the Great Game, the map of Central Asia has been greatly improved, with several new countries and culture added as well to the regional interest. Yeah, so the map's also been changed in Russia. We definitely need to take a look at some stuff. It seems like some places had more resources. Wasn't able to fully glean what exactly was what was going on, but the increasing of diplomatic interests or strategic areas makes diplomatic interests it harder to gain diplomatic interests everywhere, which is something you definitely want to do for the purposes of reverse sways. Okay, there are many new art features available with the Sphere of Influence expansion. We see a ton of them. We're not going to read through where all the art is, but we do have the cigars and smoking pipes. That one was threw me through a little bit of a head trip. When I first saw it, I was like, what's that? I was like, oh, damn. It was smoking. Alright. Here we see achievements. Duran as Herat, former Afghanistan, own all the historical states of the Durrani Empire, and not be a member of power bloc led by another country. Cool. Hyperpeace. As any country, have both Finland and Korea in your power bloc. Bootlicker. As a subject, have the pro-overlord lobby at max appeasement. We didn't do that as Krakow. I'm the captain. Look at me. Now, I'm the captain now. Look at me. As a member of your power bloc, win the struggle for the power block's leadership. Okay. I'm the captain now. New order. Have a fully decked out power block. I think we've gotten that one. Great Game, no re. Complete the Great Game objective. Honor in life. As Circassia, complete honor before life journal entry. Iran Zaman as Persia, complete the eastern frontier. 12 years have been asking, privatize all buildings and prevent them from being state or worker owned for a whole 12 years. That's rough. You have to like stop constructing to do that, I think. Because as you enter the late game, ownership will move more and more towards the state as stuff becomes less profitable because you're overbuilding. Can't touch this. As a country with at least 10% of your GDP owned by a foreign power, nationalize all the buildings and prevent them from being privatized for a whole 12 years. Standard Oil, we got that one yesterday or the day before. Own at least 30 levels of oil in foreign countries. Diplomatic victory as a great power. Have a pro-country lobby in your country for in every other great power. This one will probably be really good. I think that in order to do this, it seemed really small sample size of 1, but it seemed like as soon as we formed a power block, that gave all the GPs a catalyst to start getting mad at us, and so there's maybe some argument for not forming a power block for the purposes of diplomacy. Hermit Kingdom, or you could join someone else's power block, because you can be a GP inside of a power block. As Korea, act on the Donback movement's petitions, Cult of Reason, pass the state atheism law, and be the leader of ideological bloc with at least 10 members. We might do that as Russia. Declaration of Independence, starting as a subject nation, break free from your overlord. We should have that achievement, but we don't. And of course, no achievement is yet without a wonderful... no achievement is complete without a series of wonderful, in some cases, very disturbing icons. We, of course, have bootlicker, look in the boot. You know, these are a quick preview of the various achievements. We do like the bird one, though. The burb and the tentacles, we be about it. And here we have the changelog, aka the meat and potatoes, and we've already been going so for some time, so let's go through it. Remove directly controlled investment mechanics. Yep, it doesn't make sense with the new private ownership buildings. Added 15 new events that will fire as a result of having an active, non-revolutionary political movement. Interesting. Not sure if we've recognized which ones those are yet. Added a universal journal entry for unrecognized countries, allowing them to peacefully achieve recognition, and a diplomatic action to speed it up, and also removed forced recognition, yep, there we go, as a war goal. Added Afghan reunification journal entry for Afghanistan. Added a scripted journal entry for progress bars, which can be modded, allowing them to progress more nicely. Overlord can now join a revolutionary country against their subject. However, you have to not be involved in another diplomatic play to do this, which is often not the case. So, functionally speaking, you will not always have this opportunity, but it is very nice when you've gone communist and there's a proletariat revolt in one of your countries. It doesn't make sense for you to be supporting the capitalists, right? So now you can support the communists. Reworked map of Persia, Central Asia, Afghanistan, with new state regions, countries, and cultures. Definitely some of Russia got reworked as well. Truces can now be unidirectional, preventing a country from attacking without restricting the target country in a similar way, as well as bidirectional. The example, I think the only current way you do it is by breaking a defensive pact, or not a defensive pact, guarantee independence. Investors now have a chance of finding resources in countries they invest in, even though the country doesn't have the technology to do so on their own. I was not aware of that. This is news to me. That is very neat. Also gives you reason to like invest in certain places where you know there's oil and rubber, and they're like, okay. Removed ownership PMs for most buildings since the new ownership model introduced in 1.7 where is used where applicable instead. I think there's still a couple spots, but yeah, it's generally been changed. A huge number of diplomatic catalysts have been added to facilitate lobby creation, AI strategies, and memory cooldowns and other functions. Really, really like the AI feels much more, much less schizophrenic and much more vindictive, where if you have kind of a past with them, they start to like really be kind of aggressive towards you, and if you have been friends for forever and you've never done anything to antagonize them whatsoever, they kind of don't just like randomly go after you, like we've seen in the past. One particular case that stands out is I was friends with Great Britain for a long time in one of the runs, and then I went over 25 Infamy once, and then they got aggressive with me. But it was like 100% in response to that, which that's reasonable. That's like a catalyst. They're just not randomly decking me. Added a grant to take state overlord actions. China, Korea, Vietnam all start out as Confucian nations. Starting laws and POPs have been updated to affect this. Okay. Have we... I don't think we... Okay. Serfdom law now blocks both internal and mass migration for peasants. This is big. And so even if you have open borders, if you have a lot of peasants, you're still not going to get a lot of migration. But if you can build in other people's countries to force those peasants to be unemployed, this is maybe a way around this, specifically in the countries that have rice, because every time you build over a subsistence farm with something that's not a rice farm, you cause 5,000 unemployment. Land reform now blocks internal migration for peasants, but does not impact mass migration. I think that this is meant to say tenant farmers. Land reform law. But okay, or some land reform laws. It depends on which one. Okay, I think tenant farmers is the one blocking this. Reworked Russian state, regions, and population. Yep, these got reworked in addition to the Central Asian stuff. Starting laws. Okay, did we? I feel like there's some redundancy here. But okay. Declining to call arms will now break an alliance, defensive pact, or guarantee you have a country calling you in. Society texts now give more maneuvers for plays with each era. This has been kind of nice. There's also a society tech, multilateral alliances now, and this is pretty big, gives minus 25 or 20% infamy creation, which means as the game goes late, you can generate a lot of infamy, and it makes the cautious trait on leaders way better, because if you have getting minus 20% is more valuable when you already have minus 25%, you know, because of the way the math works. Because decreasing something by 20% when it's 100% is decreasing it by 1/5, but if you only have 75% and you decrease it by 20%, that's decreasing it by nearly a third. Added decaying modifiers that massively change. I assume that's changed nationalization cost and radical generation from nationalization in newly conquered states. Recently conquered states also suffered decaying penalties to tax collection. That's what this is. Okay. I was thinking that taxes weren't applying and that they were only applying in incorporated territories and that it was incorporation that was doing this, but is this recently conquered states also have penalties to all this? That makes sense. I think I'm going to make that mistake in the Turtle Island run then. Because, like, I was thinking, like, taxes didn't... Especially consumption taxes. I'm actually not 100% sure, but I was thinking that taxes applied everywhere. Not just where it's incorporated, but that was something I wasn't 100% sure on. And then when I was doing Turtle Island, we annexed a whole bunch of territory, and then we were generating literal 0 taxes from everything. And so this decaying modifier explains that. In my head, it was that lack of integration. Okay. Added new diplomatic action guarantee independence, which functions like a one-sided defense pact if it does, and that doesn't require approval. It's now only possible to impose laws on puppet dominion vassal and personal unions. Protectorates and tributaries are too independent unless you have a power block that allows it. Cut down to size, and this is a big one, now removes all war goals held by the target in other diplomatic plays wars, but keeps any war goals targeting them in those plays wars. Now removes all the war goals held by, but keeps any place targeting them. Yeah, so this is a big one to prevent the infamy reset, like kind of the super strong open, transfer EIC, and then let someone cut you down to size, and then finish the EIC war to get the EIC for free. No more of that. Demands for imposing law in another country are now handled with events and journal entries similar to interest group petitions. Notifications are triggered when the other company takes this action. It is now possible to make diplomatic demands, though you are already part of a diplomatic play or at war, as long as it's not against a country you've already targeted or a country that is on the same side as you as another play war. This is huge, which dramatically changes how you can play the game, because it's like there's way less planning ahead to just always be using your infamy decay, because if you're not using it, you're losing it. You also cannot make additional diplomatic demands while already dealing with the diplomatic play you initiate until that play escalates to war. This includes, I think this is any war you're in an offensive with, so I think native uprisings, or there's some conditions, or maybe it's secession movements. For example, you still can't initiate a diplo play, even though you didn't initiate the secession movement. But this is really, really useful to be able to start multiple wars, and it's going to be super useful for if you want to do a world conquest run. Added a whole bunch of cultures, added numerous new releasables to Russia, and nerfed the release of Perm in Ukraine. So gimping Russia will be way harder now, because Ukraine that you release is much smaller, the Perm you release is way smaller. There's like an East Asia country now that releases like all of the East Asia, so the third largest thing that you would release from Russia is a little bit bigger, but okay. Added 6 new companies. Commercialized agriculture now makes financial districts more likely to invest in agriculture. They can invest in either one. We were noticing with the Qing run that a lot of the the manor houses were investing in like mines and stuff, but that's just because we were only building mines. That's the only thing we were putting up for sale, and they just had way more investment pool. So there's a weight, but they can still cross invest, which is interesting. The homesteading, which we didn't like because we'd rather have capitalists owning the mines and stuff, but you'd also rather have capitalists owning the agrarian stuff. The agrarian stuff's not bad when the capitalists own it, so commercialized agriculture seems particularly strong because it allows you to build agrarian stuff and then have capitalist ownership. The homesteading law now makes agriculture buildings convert themselves to 50% self-ownership over time. Really don't know how the over time works, but homesteading in particular in the early game seems good because it allows peasants to migrate, which tenant farms does not. Sorry, my throat's getting a little dry. We are doing this in one take. Expanded the monuments effect rule to include power block statues. Monument effect game rule to include power block statues. Okay. I guess they function through the same thing that monuments do. That makes sense, I suppose. Buildings with several unstaffed levels that are at least 50% privately owned will now autonomously reduce their privately owned levels if they fail to hire for an extended period of time. This is an interesting thing because you could, if you are state ownership, or there's like an interesting interaction that I'm keen on testing. I think it's probably no good, but if you have state ownership and you buy a bunch of buildings in someone else's country, like let's say I'm investing in Venice and I put down, they have 10 tooling workshops and I just dump 50 on top of it, such that they can't deploy up all the way. But mine are foreign state-owned tooling workshops and theirs are privately owned tooling workshops. They will downsize, but it does say it has to be at least 50% privately owned, so I guess I would have to put 9 buildings down or 10 buildings down to match their 10 tooling workshop. But the point is you can effectively coerce them to downsize and then you're left with the remaining open buildings, and you can do this to push them out. I don't think it's worth it because you're building 10 buildings with the knowing that there won't be enough labor for all of them, and you should just generally be building where you can build labor, but it is a bit of an interesting one. Something that's also abusable that we haven't tested out is just building a ton of railways in other people's countries because the AI will always subsidize them, and so you could just build like 300 levels of railway in a foreign country and then they would just die to the subsidy. We haven't tried that out yet, but it is something that's maybe interesting. Economies of scale now scales against the employed levels of the building. So building empty levels of the building will not give you economies of scale. So an empty building no longer grants throughput bonuses. Additionally, economies of scale now starts granting bonuses immediately at level 1. So a half-employed building at level 1 will get 0.5% throughput, for example. Wait, it starts applying at level 50. Oh my god, it starts applying at level 1. You mean to say we've been building till 51 this entire time now? That we've been playing all this and we haven't noticed it? Just on autopilot. Okay, fair enough. It starts at level 1, so now you only have to build buildings to level 50. The Victoria 3 math no longer applies, but the loud cars, they keep coming. Added Seminole Wars journal entry to the USA, present at game start. Added give state diplomatic action. Added diplomatic actions for increasing and decreasing autonomy in subjects. You can now impose law on another country even if they are currently trying to enact something else. They will have the option to cancel the current law or defer enacting it till later, or you do not have support for this law. You will now have to see their chances before issuing the demand. Okay. This is just kind of quality of life. Change the time to respond on diplomatic proposals from 14 days to 30 days. The AI will still respond in the same amount of time. That gives you more time to prepare for war, I suppose. A country that can now only ever have one diplomatic proposal pending towards a given country. I suppose that makes sense. Change the required tech for steam-powered fishing and whaling production to gantry cranes instead of ironclads, allowing smoother transition between civil and military usage of steam-powered ships. Thanks to Wowza, Mr. Rework Scrooge for the suggestion. Thank God. Okay. That makes it, that's so much better. Right? Are we still getting the steamship in the shipyards? I mean, it should be all the economic ones should be on one tech, and all the military ones should be on another tech. So ironclad should be on the other tech. But if this is going to be a good one. Thank you, Mr. Scrooge. Increase autonomy and independence diplomatic plays now. For liberty desire requirements. Added an event referring to the Australian Emu War. How many emus does it take? Added a new Russian Republic and Russian Soviet Republic names to Russia. Cool. Reworked the way that we display pact influence costs to be more consistent and always have breakdown tooltips. We haven't seen that, but we've stopped mousing over that tooltip so much because that tooltip's often like really just a hot mess. So now it might be a little bit more fixed. Implemented more characters for Central Asia, East Asia, Britain, and Africa. Fantastic. They don't have a lot of characters. Or they don't have a lot of agitators, generally speaking. Lack of agitators is one of the things that's kind of a little bit frustrating, playing as someone who doesn't have European primary culture. You just have access to way more tools in terms of changing your politics as someone who's European culture, because you could accept them, and then, yeah. Added the Wadi and mirroring peoples to Australia. There's now 1 year cooldown between attempting to impose a law in another country if they outright reject your demand. Otherwise, you will have to wait until they enact or reject the law you previously gave them. Okay. I wonder if that's to prevent you abusing them to rev. This isn't something we did, but it would make sense. Because if they have a movement for something, and then you make them enact it, and then you make them stop enacting it, that would make them more revolutionary, yeah? Servicemen now gain officer qualifications faster while deployed on active wars. Interesting. Added additional state traits to Russia. We haven't taken a close look at that. Added historical intergroup leaders to Australian colonies. I don't think they reworked the arable land in Australia, though, which is really what Australia needs. Added pro and anti-country lobbies to various nations in 1836. Yeah, it does seem like immediately, very consistently, Britain and Russia have been at each other's throats. But also that's part of journal entry logic. Added silk as a potential resource in Lebanon and starting silk plantation to model the historical Lebanese silk industry. Okay. Added Mount Lebanon state trait to Lebanon, increasing state silk throughput. Okay. Interesting. Forming the Free States of America now requires that you have abolished slavery. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Made South Bessarabia retrocession borders more historically accurate. Updated migration concepts for clarity. Henry Temple is now referred to as Henry Palmerston. Okay. Added historical ruler for Indian Territory at game start. Adjusted Tasmanian population to reflect historic situation. Baltic State region has been renamed Scandinavia due to Finland becoming its own region. Okay, so that is all the improvements that have been changed here, and so we're about halfway through it, a little more than halfway through, but man, this changelog is a long one. We're just reading through it, making sure we didn't miss anything in terms of our knowledge base, but also reporting on some of the things that we've, been learning over the past, 50 or so hours having played. So AI seems a lot different. Major work done on economic AI, allowing it to use the new features of 1.7 and improve its overall ability to grow its economy. I think it's 1920 or something in one of our runs, and we have the USA with nearly 500 million GDP, which is tremendous. That seems much better than the AI has done before. I don't know to what extent that has to do with... Actually, they're not even in a power block. They're not getting any advantages from principal groups allowing them to do anything. The AI just seems to be quite a bit stronger and also diplomatically makes a lot more sense. The AI now always has a concrete region for changing its strategic desire and attitude towards another country. Yep, it's not schizophrenic anymore. Based on the new system of diplomatic catalysts, for example, increasing relations within a country may result in the adoption of a more friendly attitude, while breaking a pact or triggering a diplomatic incident can result in the reverse. I think the negative relations can snowball really hard and be really hard to recover from, but that also perhaps makes sense, right? In terms of being a good simulation, you shouldn't look, if you really slap someone down, they should have a problem with you. This is now shown to the player in a notification when a country changes their attitude, and you can tooltip the attitude of a country to see what caused them to adopt that attitude. the AI is now a much less, and this is a big one too, the AI is now much less willing to accept reverse sways if it has an overwhelming advantage in the play, even if they're undecided participants who could potentially challenge for them. They are less willing to accept reverse sways if there's something, if they aren't getting very much from it, and also very keyly, you have way less reverse sway opportunities, because now whenever there's a revolution in your subjects, the subject is the leader of that diplomatic play, and that was one of the main sources of getting free sways on the UK, and now you can't sway the UK themselves. So you have to wait for their revolution or their wars, which significantly decreases that, but they're also, they won't accept it if they have an overwhelming advantage. The entire yo-yo sway mechanic destroys this overwhelming advantage, but they're even less likely to accept under normal conditions. The AI is now much less willing to accept reverse sways that involve giving something up, subjects, states, etc., if they don't stand to lose much from the enemy's war goals. So they're a lot sticky if there's not a big deal to be lost. Now, the best opportunities now are whenever they're experiencing a revolution. They will give you the bag over a revolution, but also that represents for them like an existential threat. But I think it's probably based on the number of... I don't know if it's based on how much they're giving up or the amount of diplomatic maneuvers in what is being asked of them that makes them more likely to accept stuff. In theory, it shouldn't be based on maneuvers, but I suspect it might be. Most diplomatic demands now have an upper bound on AI acceptance, ensuring a small to moderate chance you won't get your way. Okay, the AI is now willing to take on more infamy later in the game. Boy, are they! They don't mess about. AI is now generally more keen to add war goals rather than wasting maneuvers. So long as they don't take on excessive amounts of infamy, they're a lot more aggressive. AI subject countries now have a chance of accepting a diplomatic demand for full annexation with their liberty desires at loyal. It's pretty high, a lot higher than I would have suspected. USA will now want to take Colorado from Mexico, thank God. Acceptance scores for annexation and loyal subjects have both been decreased in impact. Acceptance scores for annexation and loyal subjects have both been decreased in impact? Okay. Call ally now generates plus 25 AI acceptance bonus when used as a sway. I mean, we had a defensive pact, and I still don't think it was working as designed, but to be fair, that was on an earlier version of the game. They might have fixed it, but it wasn't... They were able to join against us when our subject revved, and so I don't know if I trust the AI alliances yet. We're gonna have to play around with it. We haven't, like, touched AI alliances since, like, 1.1, 1.2 in a really substantive way, because they've just been, like, kind of trashy, and they're still probably not worth the Diplo score, but we'll have to mess around with it a little bit more now that stuff's been updated, because this makes it so that they're less likely to be schizophrenic, you know? Okay. Subjects now have access to 4 new AI strategies to placate or break them free from their overlord. Overlords now consider obligations owed to them as subjects more important for the purposes of AI diplomatic acceptance score calculations. Interesting. I guess that's because they can't declare a play on you if you have an obligation. Fixed an issue that would make the U.S. not care about Kansas when manifesting their destiny. Man, truth hurts. We're not in Kansas anymore. All right. Balance here. Now we're going to be talking about. Subjects need at least a 75 liberty desire to expel diplomats. Yeah, we figured this out the hard way. It's a little bit rough because if you're trying to break free, you want to generate liberty desire. One of the better ways to do it is to get worse relations. If you don't have a means to get worse relations and they're improving relations while you're damaging relations, you'd of course want to expel diplomats, but you can't unless you already have the high liberty desire. So, if you're playing as a subject, you can, in some sense, get trapped underneath this, depending on the balance. They've rebalanced it since we tried 2 subject runs, one before they rebalanced it, where it was basically impossible to get Liberty Desire, and the other where it felt reasonable enough that we could get Liberty Desire. Changed the required text to research gantry cranes to include screw frigates. Okay. Added employment of 200 clerks and 50 bureaucrats to the base trade center PM. I don't know how much this is going to affect things, but it will affect clout quite a bit, right? I think we noticed quite a bit more petite bourgeoisie clout, generally speaking. So OPB is probably going to be happy about that because that's something he cares about. And this, I suspect, is one of the sources of that, right? Officers now only take half the brunt of casualties compared to servicemen. Okay. Added adjacencies to southern Chilean islands so that they are all connected. Cool. British and Japanese intelligentsia are now constitutionalist by default rather than Republican. I don't even know. I don't know necessarily the difference. I assume maybe this is they are okay with. They're probably okay with monarchies is probably the substantive difference, and that is an interesting change, and I suppose makes sense. Makes things harder for Japan, I suppose, or easier if you want to stay with Meiji. So, removed infrastructure costs from goldfields. Oh, that's so nice. That's the good stuff. Nothing like playing Nevada and then having the like 7 infrastructure that you have in Nevada, and then the gold fields appear, and then you have like negative infrastructure. Increased farm sizes in some parts of Qing to prevent immediate famines. You don't say. This is in part required because they reduced the food supply in China by nearly 50%. The food you get from a farm is like reduced by like roughly 40% at all levels, and the food you get from a subsistence farm is cut in half. So really, grain will now be permanent expensive, basically, instead of the being cheap. And what they did to kind of buff the building is they made the labor-saving PMs really good on the buildings, and so now rice is significantly nerfed. Like, I don't even know, I think rice might not even be the best grain building anymore because it doesn't have access to later labor-saving PMs, which are really good now, instead of being like kind of, well, I'm just not sure if you use the last one because it uses oil, but like it's mathematically it's very efficient, so maybe you even use it even though it takes oil. Easier than the norm to impose laws on puppets and personal unions. Great Hunger journal entry can no longer appear until 1837, and grain prices for the journal entry have been increased to 70%. Makes sense because there's way less grain. They haven't mentioned that in balance. They haven't mentioned that they just... they didn't change like any other PM as far as we could tell when we took a look at the PMs. Chainsaws is still an absurd PM that's like crazy. That was the first thing I checked when I got in game. I checked the chainsaws PM. I was like, did you change it? And no, they didn't. They just like nerfed grain really hard across the board. Increase the amount of academics and decrease the amount of clerks when bourgeoisie patronage production method active on arts academies. More academics, less clerks. Okay, fair. Academics have a much higher wage multiplier and will be primarily intelligentsia. Clerks will be primarily petite bourgeoisie, so this is going to make the building less profitable. You could no longer build fishing wharves in the states of Ob or Upper Yesenek. Okay, I think we actually noticed a place where you could build ports but no fishing. Maybe that was one of those states. Fixed the starting military formations for Greece, Serbia, etc., 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 so that they no longer start with unit types they cannot recruit. Makes sense. Taking the states from your subjects, even to give to other subjects, now creates a diplomatic incident. I assume that means infamy accumulation. Reduced a police institution, reduction of turmoil effects from 15% to level to 10%. That is substantive. We have to double check if that is just... well, so different police forces have different amounts. I believe it was 15% for dedicated and 20% for the landowner one. If the landowner one's still 20%, the landowner one might actually be solid. Because that means even though its level cap is at 3, if you're getting 20% for 3 levels, that's 60%. That's more turmoil reduction overall. I imagine they've been across the board reduced by 5%, but the 5%, if the landowner one is 15% versus 10%, now it represents being 50% more instead of 33% more. And if you can go only up to level 3, that's 45%. Instead of a dedicated police at max level being 50%. But yeah, there's way more radicalism overall because of the changes to tax and grain, and your ability to mitigate the negative effect of radicalism, which the big negative effect is turmoil, interfering with your ability to construct, because there's not much point in running high taxes to construct more if a bunch of your states are going to have turmoil, because then that decreases the amount of construction you have, right? It doesn't make sense because you're not actually getting more buildings, although you are stimulating the economy more, so it's a little bit of a different thing. You stimulate the economy by running a negative balance. You can run a negative balance by decreasing taxes. So this makes it just overall radicalism seems a lot more painful this patch as well. Vanguardism is unlocked by political agitation rather than socialism. Okay. Reduce the sick man of Europe's prestige malice from 33% to 25%. That's probably to make the blocks not crazy bad. Reduce the progressiveness score of theocracy to -25 instead of -50. Okay. Reduce the size of USA's navy slightly. Damn, we fell off. Lower the amount of convoys needed to complete the improved supply network tutorial. Okay. Alright, we have a bunch of art changes. We're not going to read through them. Apologies to all the artists out there. We will see the art with our eyes, not read about it also with our eyes. Audio. I didn't notice any new music. Fix weapon reload sounds to make it less repetitive. Yeah, we didn't notice any new music. Don't see no new music. Alright, we'll continue. Interface. So, I'm tempted to read through this. But honestly, I think most of these are not going to be particularly substantive, so we're not going to read through the interface. If anyone thinks that there's something super substantive that I should have read in here that I didn't, because I didn't read this through before going through it for the recording today, please let me know, but we're just not going to read through it. When the UI improves, it improves. I gave a lot of feedback on UI stuff for 1.7, and I don't know how many changes they were able to implement or not, because I had an earlier version, not the version that has gotten released now today when I released this video, but okay. Performance is so much better. Oh my god. There's like one thing that lags out, which it seems like if you can invest in a lot of other foreign countries, which happens if you have a lot of subjects, it lags out when you open a building construction lens, and this wasn't present before. However, your ability to pass time in game is just so dramatically like improved. It's just like absolutely wild. It's so much faster. We were really pushing things pretty hard. I guess we didn't run like 300 trade routes. Running several hundred trade routes probably still lags it out. I think that generally we started to just try and keep leaner on the trade route count for performance reasons, even though it's like objectively not as good. There's a power block principle that incentivizes you to have a lot of trade routes, which is kind of rough if you like don't want to do it for performance reasons, but performance is so much better. And let's read about it. Complete rewrite of the modifier system to improve performance. The caveat for modifiers mentioned in Dev Diary 120 no longer applies. Scripted modifiers will propagate as intended. Improved performance of several tick tasks. Minimized unnecessary counter updates. Improve the performance of AI's journal entry interactions by reducing extraneous trigger checks. Reduce memory consumption by coat of arms flag definitions. Okay. Optimize the calculation of the current flag definition for each country. Optimize the frequency of coat of arms updates for which led to less total execution time. Optimize scripts for flag definitions. Reworked outliner system to improve performance. On-map notifications no longer spawn one off-screen. I could just tell you that it's so much better. Like, this is just reading through, like, a log of several things that they did, but performance is just so much better. It's just, like, wildly better. And this has been one of my chief complaints for a really long time. And now it seems like they can add features to the game because the performance is at an acceptable level. So, it's dramatically improved. I don't know what else to tell you because I would have to show you. You'll be able to see it in game when we get in the game. Speaking of which, if you're watching this on the 24th, we will be streaming all day if you wanted to stop by. Modding. I do not engage in modding. I can't break this down for you guys. I think to the extent that would do it justice for the people who are actually interested in modding. If you are a modder and you have a really loud car and you're outside my window, you know, do your thing. But if you are, they're out today. It's because it's the weekend and it's summer. But if you are a modder and there's something that really crazy in here, please, that's important, please feel free to put it in the comments so that other people who mod can read through it. And if you care about modding and you want to know what's been put in here, also feel free to scroll through the comments and see if anyone has pointed something out. But we're not going to read through all of it. Okay, bug fixes. There's a lot of bug fixes. We're going to read through some of these, though, because my understanding is some of these bug fixes are preventing stuff we consider to be meta. War goals targeting subjects not being contested now prevents Overlord from dropping below 0 war support. War goals targeting subjects not being contested now prevents Overlord. Thank God. So it used to be if you would have a war goal that, like, let's say I attack EIC for Bengal or South Bengal. It used to be the case that because there was no war goal targeting Great Britain, they would get enforced below 0 because there was no war goal targeting them explicitly, and then when they capitulate, I would just take the Bengal. So I would just have to declare for Bengal and then just defend my borders, and then I would eventually get it. And it appears that they have fixed this. This is huge. We never dirtily abused this. Yeah, we never declared wars knowing that we were going to use this to crush the AI. I don't even think we really ever take stuff off of subjects that often, but this was something you could do. Now you can no longer do it. Improve the stability of the multiplayer game by fixing several out-of-sync issues. Fantastic. We might be able to bring back 3v3v3s. We'll see. Fixed a bug where interest group could pick a ruler of air monarchy to be the next leader if they were a general. So this has been a highly meta way to start as Russia for forever. You would force your heir to be a general so that they could be the leader of the interest group, so that you could get a market liberal landowner at game start. You can no longer do this. So the meta way of starting as Russia has been killed. This is the main one we wanted to read about, just because we'd heard about it. Okay. All straight apostrophes have been replaced to fix an issue where tooltip broke. Fixed a bug. Well, actually, this is the main bug fix we wanted. We'll kind of skim through here. Fix a bug where the revoke claim war goal can only be used once for each country against each enemy per play. I thought that was intentional. I thought that was WAD. But okay, we did notice you can remove more, revoke more claims, which is going to be useful because I think in a lot of spots you don't want to completely gain a ton of infamy. You have leftover maneuvers. You have some of their stuff, so you can just revoke the claim, which is important because the AI is a little bit more intelligent diplomatically, and so if they have a claim, they'll generally be more aggro towards you, so revoking it is probably important. Inconclusive battles. I think that maybe we skimmed through a lot of this. Yeah, I mean, we really just wanted to mention the Russia one. A BG Grimm, the company now has 10% infrastructure from population instead of 0.1. Okay. Did they fix the Ericsson company? That company is super OP. Artillery commander trait now correctly applies to artillery units. Interesting. Fixed a bug where revolution... I believe you get the trait more often if you have artillery in your army. Fixed a bug where... and it's a good one because heavy barrage is a good command. Revolution map mounted could spawn in an incorrect state with an incorrect interest group. Localization on naval invasion stalled tooltip. Is no longer possible to exceed if only visually the commander limit of formations by using the move all and move half button. Okay. Diplomatic victory achievement probably requires players to be a great power. I don't even think that achievement was in game before, so I'm not sure exactly what that's about. You can't form a colonial administration in order to prevent war goals from being invalidated while in a diplo play. Makes sense. I think you also used to be able to release subjects to invalidate war goals, and you can no longer do that as well. You cannot be in the middle of a war, release a subject that is targeted by a war goal, and invalidate it. We tried to do that as Krakow, and it didn't work, where we released a subject after swaying Austria, offering them a province that would have been owned by like Slovenia or whatever. Then we released Slovenia and it just auto-annexed it, and we were like, oh, big sad. They finally nerfed it. No, wait. Empresas Electrices S.C.O. This is the wrong company. Company now gives 5% infrastructure from population instead of 0.05. This gives 100 pops. No, they still didn't fix Ericsson. Why does Ericsson have 10 levels of... Why does Ericsson have 10 levels of private universities on it? No, no. Alright, we'll just continue to not abuse that company. Yeah, who wanted 100% literacy anyways? Not me. Improve the performance of the risk care. Journal entry, added scroll bars. Revolutions and coups can no longer spawn in communist and council republics before socialism has been reached. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, does this nerf the... This might nerf the way to early start. There's a way to force, currently in 1.6, at the time of recording this video, there's a way you can form the USSR in the first couple of years. Maybe this breaks it. We'll see. Nicholas I of Russia dying or abdicating before 1843 will no longer result in the generation of an era with a negative age. They do be like that sometimes. Brazilian agitated clothing. Trade states will now be unavailable to select when no valid options exist. That seems fine. Positive journal stage now requires you either be Catholic or have state atheism enacted. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that journal entry is good, so I guess you just have to be Catholic? Interesting. Wow, Catholics get all the good stuff. That journal entry gives you a lot of literacy for free, if I recall, if it's the one I'm thinking it is. And they also get the Vatican, so just like... I mean, Catholic was already kind of like... Well, the Catholic IG isn't that great, but you get bonuses for being Catholic. So being Catholic and then going, like, total separation, you just gain free stuff, bro. And then if you're Muslim, your pops, like, don't consume alcohol, which is, I think, bad. So, yeah. The Muslim IG bonuses are also really bad. So there's that too. I think conversion rate's like pretty bad, which is the one I'm complaining about. Then the Far East one, the one that China has, is really good with the decreased radicalism. Okay. Let's see. Fix a lot of typos across the game. There's no period at the end of this. Of course, it's all in bullet points, so there's no periods anyways. We were just really wanted there to be a typo in here, but I'm not seeing it. Okay, Banana Republic requires bananas specifically. That seems to make sense. Fragile Unity points will be gained or lost. Now fire the correct notification. But it doesn't... Opium War is now invalidated if their target ceases to exist. Oh, this will prevent multiple Opium Wars. So it used to be the case that if you like had a revolution as China and the revolution annexed original Qing, then the revolution could get Opium Wars as well. So I guess they fixed this, fixed the birth date of Alexander II. Okay, so that's kind of just trying to cruise through the important ones. The one I was aware of that really wanted to talk about is, this one is just like a huge nerf to Russia's start. Russia will actually be a lot harder at start. It always should have been harder. It shouldn't have been. You just get to go free laissez-faire every single time. I think laissez-faire is not even what you would want to go now anyways. I think you would want to go interventionism, but you don't get to do it for free. So I think that this change is probably good. It was this weird gimmicky thing that you did specifically with Russia, and now you can't do it. So, which I think is, makes a lot of sense. Okay. But to those of you who have followed our changelogs for a while, and to those of you who have sat through an hour and 20 minutes now of us going through it, you might be surprised by the relatively small size of this one. This is, well, I mean, they've been talking about a lot of the features, and they kind of offloaded a lot of the features to talk about it. This is because most of the content in the update is brand new and far-reaching, and due to that many of the additions and changes we've made would not make a lot of sense if we spelled them out on our own. Yeah, so like a lot of its stuff was just linking to the other stuff where they've talked about it and elsewhere. It is safe to say that Update 1.7's Kawa is massive and will introduce a whole new dimension to Victoria 3 experience. This is so much bigger than 1.5. Like, obviously this is the biggest change overall to Victoria 3, and one of the things I'm enjoying the most is that the AI plays a lot better too. and the game's faster, and like there's a bunch of new toys, and and diplomacy and expansion strategy is completely different, and I'm not sure exactly what's optimal yet, these types of things. And so really excited about it. And once you get your hands on it, you will see what I mean. Yeah, you will. In the meantime, I will be happy to answer any of your questions in the official comment section. Next week, Martin Wiz N-Word will say a few words about his take on Sphere of Influence post-launch, which you will get to see on Thursday. I was embargoed, that's why you don't see this one on Thursday. And I hope you joined us again. Please pop in and say hi on the Discord, and let us know what you think of Update 1.7, Kawa, and Spheres of Influence. We didn't get the full sandwich for the Happy Thursday, right? Everyone knows that happy salutations belong in sandwich form with, happy at the beginning and the end. But we did get the full capitalized Happy Thursday. Now, to be fair, it was at the beginning of the sentence. And to be fair, if you're watching this the day I release it, it's no longer Thursday. So that is a bit of a conundrum. But with that said, if you like this video, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. Super excited about Victoria. You can tell me how excited you are about 1.7. We've been enjoying it a lot. But other than all that, happy Sphere of Influence release. Big nice.